Hello there, all you wonderful people. Rates have been cut, we're going down, and we're going to explain why. Obviously, this has to do with the government shutdown. Although the mighty Jerome Powell did actually cut rates by 25 basis points, and you would expect that to actually push the rates up, push the markets up. Both the stock market gave up its gains. It might gain them back later today. And the crypto market did go down. Now, why is that? Aren't rate cuts supposed to bring the market up? Yes, but basically what he said is we might not do future rate cut in December because of lack of data. And why do we have a lack of data? Well, it's because the government's shut down and the BLS is essentially no longer functioning. People were expecting this rate cut. It's already been priced in, but they were also expecting a rate cut in December. And what he's saying, like, no, 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 we don't have data for several months. And if it's still shut down then, we are not cutting. And that, my friends, is why the markets are down today. Now, they'll probably gain back. The crypto market hasn't really gone down too much. From 113 to 111, not a big deal, obviously. Except for the people that are massively leveraging 100x, but it's okay. Those people are fools, and we shouldn't hate fools, we should just pity them. So pity the fools. But anyways, if you're not leveraging, you're perfectly fine. You can just ride this out. And I do believe we'll gain back fairly quickly. Now, the problem is the government's probably going to be shut down for a while because neither side is going to really give in, and we're kind of in an impasse. I think kind of Trump wants the government to be shut down because there's a lot of things like the Epstein files that could actually come out once the government reopens up. So he probably doesn't want it to reopen up. Now, yes, it is the Democrats voting against reopening the government unless you get the healthcare bill, ACA tax credits extended. However, the Republicans can actually go over that by basically using the so-called nuclear option. Some of you are like, well, they can't use the nuclear option because they've never done it before. Wrong. They've already done it 3 times this year. They did it a couple of months ago, as Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of their prominent spokespersons, have pointed out. They did it several months ago to basically affirm 3 of Trump's appointees. So it's nothing new for them to use the nuclear option. In fact, it's not a nuclear option realistically because they've already used it 3 times. And besides Japan, we've never used the real nuclear option. And they've already done it 3 times, and I'm sure they'll do it again next year if they want more appointees. So it's not really a nuclear option. They can just do this at any time, but they're not really willing to. There's 2 reasons. Because what they're fighting over is the extension of ACA tax credits for the not so well off. And most people are actually for extending those tax credits. Now, extending those tax credits cost a lot of money, and the GOP is obviously trying to cut the budget so they can actually afford their tax cuts for the rich that they actually passed earlier this year in the one big beautiful bill. Plus, they have the $40 billion for Argentina or whatever and some of the other stuff. So they're trying to find a place to cut. And obviously, not extending the ACA tax credits is something that would save a lot of money so they can give those cuts that they did earlier that year. But they don't really want to frame it that way. Obviously, tax cuts for the rich generally are not very popular with the general populace. And plus, about just over 70% of people on the last poll did actually say they want to extend the ACX tax credits because there's a lot of families and a lot of Republican families in rural communities that depend on that. Now, their premiums might actually triple if those tax credits aren't actually extended. So they don't really want to use the nuclear option to actually kill those tax credits, and they don't want to be the party that's being blamed to kill those tax credits, but they don't want to extend them. So right now it's kind of their optimal solution where it's just we can blame the other party for holding the government hostage over the tax credits, but we don't really want to go over their head and just cancel the tax credits because that's very, very unpopular. Trump also has a reason to want to keep the government closed. And he might be the one ultimately telling them not to compromise. Because remember, the new Democratic member of Congress just got voted in, replacing, I think, a GOP member. And she is the last vote to actually to force the Epstein files to actually come out. So as soon as she's sworn in, and you don't really need the government to open, to not swear her in. But Mike Johnson actually does have the option just to basically not convene Congress as long as the government's shut down. You can actually convene Congress while the government's shut down to negotiate and do other things. But he's not convening Congress because if he convenes Congress, he will have no excuse not to swear this member of Congress in who just got voted in. And he knows she is the last vote to force the Epstein files out. And Trump has been vehemently against releasing the Epstein files for whatever reason. He's probably in them. That's probably why he doesn't want to actually release the Epstein files. And if she's sworn in and if the government opens, she would absolutely get sworn in and the Epstein files would have to come out. Plus, now he's getting questions for his pardon of CZ. And they're like, why did you pardon him? Like, what's behind all of that? And so he doesn't really want to deal with that either. He's just basically said, like, I like CZ and I don't think what he did was a crime, but that's not really a valid reason. You'd have to look at, did he actually do all that stuff? He probably did. And you're wondering, like, is it fair that they're going after him instead of everyone else? Maybe not. But once again, if you're targeting like a mafia, you don't target the henchman, you target the boss. And in crypto, there is no bigger boss than CZ. So they're questioning him a lot about that. Plus his $2 billion investment into Trump's stablecoin has raised a lot of questions, and he's also involved with like Trump media and stuff like that. Now, there's also rumors of him helping them launch a perp dex and all that stuff. So a lot of questions swirling around, a lot of questions that he probably doesn't want to answer. He doesn't want the Epstein files released, and the only way to prevent that from being released is to actually keep the government shut down so they don't have to swear this new member of Congress in. So the government's probably going to be shut down for a while because we're in an impasse, and there's reason both from Mike Johnson and Donald Trump to actually keep the government closed, as well as, like if they just keep the impasse right now, the Democrats are not willing to give in on the ACA tax credits thing. So there is a good chance that we won't get any more data until like December or later. And if we don't get that, Jerome Powell may not cut interest rates again. Now, some of you are quite saying like, oh, it's definitely manipulation that he actually said that. It might be, but let me remind you something. Jerome Powell doesn't care about crypto. Jerome Powell does not care about your bags. His job is not to pump your bags. So he could care less what happens to your crypto bags, but he is just stating it like it is because he's generally a data-driven guy. And if he doesn't have data, he's already cut twice. Remember, he's already cut twice this year. And if he doesn't have any more data, he might not want to cut again. Now, my prediction is the government's going to open back up before December, and he will cut again. But that's not certain, and uncertainty definitely is clogging the market. Now, for some good news, Germany, right after France, has also made a pro-crypto move. Germany's AfD, which is kind of like their far-right party, does urge their government to treat Bitcoin as a strategic asset. Now, this is following France, which rejected a CBDC in terms of like a digital euro, and actually promoted the idea of the government investing in Bitcoin. So that's good. So Germany's MiCA framework is seen by Europe's MiCA framework is seen by Germany's main opposition party as a barrier to Bitcoin adoption, sparking calls for regulatory reform. The German parliament is set to review a motion urging the government to recognize Bitcoin as a unique, decentralized digital asset that deserves strategic approach. Germany's main opposition party, Alternative for Germany, has submitted an official motion to the national parliament, the Bundestag, opposing the overregulation of Bitcoin. So pretty good news coming out of Germany. Filed on Thursday, the motion argues that Bitcoin is fundamentally different from other crypto assets and should not fall under a Europe-wide crypto regulatory framework known as markets in crypto assets. Overregulation of Bitcoin service providers and users in the course of national MiCA implementation jeopardizes Germany's innovative capacity, financial freedom, and digital sovereignty. So it looks like there's more and more people that are coming up against the digital euro and coming pro-crypto in Europe. So Europe might eventually become one of these crypto havens as well. Germany, obviously the biggest economy in Europe, has a lot of sway in that. AfD, I believe, is the second or third biggest party in Germany. They are the far right party, but I think like they are going to moderate a little bit if they actually want to get into power and into mainstream politics. So, but that's still very, very good for Germany. So Bitwise has notched 55 million in its Solana staking ETF, and that's the highest of all crypto ETFs this year. Now, both Bitcoin and Ethereum were last year, so that does not count. It's still below them. But if you look at the first day of trading, the Solana ETF got 56 million in volume. The Hbar ETF got $8 million in volume, and the LTC ETF only got $1 million in volume. So obviously, there's a lot more interest in Solana than Hbar, and a lot more interest in Hbar than LTC. And of course, LTC, by this measure, is pretty much dead. So you can stop hoping for LTC to come up, because that's not happening. The BSOL ETF also attracted around 233 million in assets prior to launch, and that has signaled increasing institutional engagement and confidence in being exposed to staking rewards for those who lock up cryptocurrency on the blockchain to validate transactions. Very, very nice for Solana. And of course, very, very nice for Solana. Not bad for Hbar, and just don't bother with LTC. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.